Hello, friends. Maestro here, bringing you another episode of my favorite podcast. And this is the first guest episode of the year. Maybe the only one. I don't know. They're a little bit tough to do, but I got a repeat offender on here. I brought her on the podcast at least once, maybe more than that. I talk a lot, so I forget. But real talk, y'all, there is this shit ton of shit going on in the world right now. And for better or for worse, whenever that's happening, I reach out to Dr. JPop, right? For better or for worse for her, when all this stuff is going on, I'm like, hey, I could use someone to talk to. And I have learned that we all have different ways that we show up. We all have different ways that we contribute. And one of the best ways that I can contribute is by giving people a platform. It's by giving people a microphone. So today I am giving Dr. JPop the microphone. So without further ado, welcome back to the show. One of my very, very good friends and someone that you all know and love because she's in every single episode at the beginning. Y'all were sad. I changed the intro and you thought that I took her out. Like, are you crazy? Are you crazy? No, that's the best part of the whole intro. I know. So welcome back to the show. Your favorite part of the intro music, my good friend, Dr. J-Pop. Welcome.
Hey, y'all. It's good to be back with my friend.
People were like, I thought for a second that it wasn't in there. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? I know that y'all speak for the past 6 years. If you listen to the intro, you're saying it along with her. So
The new and improved version this time. Little character.
All right. It's good. We've grown up together.
We have.
Very much from the humble beginnings of Rock Tape Course, where Jennifer didn't remember anything that I taught. And she's like, will you taught that? And I was like, yes, we went over that.
See, every time, y'all. Every time.
Yes,
Go back and listen to the other episodes and you'll hear every time.
It's still in there. I still remember that. I'm like, but remember? You didn't remember. So this, we have been together through racism happened in 2020 and everyone was like, it's here. And now it's back and everything is happening times a million in 2025. So how about actually if we start off with just a little bit of a catch up? I don't even know where exactly we were the last time, but how about if you set the stage with just kind of what you've been doing that makes sense for you to share, and then we'll go.
Yeah. It's funny you said racism is back, and I'm thinking all the isms are on the stage right now.
Everything is
and for a lot of us who have been navigating the world with that one lens or two lenses, depending on our identities, you could see the stripping coming and how it was becoming less about different groups and how it was going to be everyone who was impacted. And I think probably 2 years ago, I was watching how we were interacting with each other online and the questions I was getting in courses, and I realized, oh shit. I think we missed something, guys. I think we missed something. Now, you already know, I don't believe in leading with shame. I don't believe in leading with guilt. That has never gotten anyone anywhere. It definitely hasn't brought us closer together. But then I looked at how we introduced allyship in 2020 and the fact that we didn't consider everybody's state of mind, that we didn't consider what everybody else was going through, and that some of that manic energy we were feeling, while they could see the things that were wrong, there was still this innate feeling, I got to do something. I got to do something. Now that I know I got to do something. And there's nothing that you've ever learned where you immediately knew after you figured out you didn't know. There's literally nothing you can really do except for like the simple games, but big concepts like something that's been around for 400 plus years, there's absolutely no way I can give you something today and tomorrow you're going to be a completely new person. And yet it felt like we just kept saying, go do this, go to this protest, call your senator for this, and show up for Black people and show up for trans people. It was just this is what you do.
Yes,
and when you look at when you looked at the culture of our world, We live off of checklists. We
Mm-hmm.
live off of tasks. We don't even stop to question things anymore. We just say, how do I do this? How do I be this? Bet I'm going to go do
Mm-hmm.
it. Not considering there may be a chasm, a gap of learning, a gap of understanding that we're missing if we don't
Okay.
first say, why why is all of this here? One,
Uh,
and what
that.
part have I played in co-creating all of this, even if it was subconsciously? And I think if we stopped and did that in 2020, I do believe we would be approaching 2025 differently. I also believe we may be in a different state in DC, but here we are. Here we are. So the last 2 years for me have really been, how do I help people just see themselves in this work, not separate themselves, not do what they're told, not show up, because what we were also seeing was the minute you were questioned, the
Mm-hmm.
minute you were called out, whether it was warranted or not, the minute you heard somebody label you racist or
Mm-hmm.
homophobic, you went to
Mm-hmm.
your checklist. You said, there's no way, because I've got a black friend, and
Mm-hmm.
I went to the protest and I read the books.
I
And say,
checked
yeah,
the
but
list.
we didn't integrate. We didn't get that processing part, which can take a long time. Even in this work, 40 something years now, I'm still unlearning things and still having to have self checks for myself. And I feel like there was a degree of perfection that was put on allyship that now I'm like, let's just burn the word.
You stole
Let's
my
burn
question.
it. Let's burn it. I
Stole my
understood.
question.
I understood that people didn't like it, but now it's less about the people and more about what it represents for people, and how it's like, well, either we revamp it for real or we just burn it down and say, what do we want to be? Who do we want to be? And how do we move forward with this new knowing that we have? So
When
yeah,
you say
that's the
people
last two
didn't
years.
like it, who? Can you say more about that?
When you say that
People
again,
didn't like allyship. You said people didn't like the word allyship. Can you speak to
there are a
that?
lot of black activists who, even in 2020, were like, I hate the term ally. I hate the term ally because it's more than that. And it was a part, they were right. Let's put that first. Let's give a whole lot of credence to the understanding of why, but it was the breaking down of why that we didn't see.
Yeah.
And that's through no fault of any activist. We are all on a healing, grieving, growing journey. Um, but what people didn't understand in that gap, and they couldn't figure out for themselves, they just filled in with tasks
Yeah.
and more tasks and more tasks and more groups and more fight and more yelling and more speaking, and just not enough stopping and saying, what are we doing?
Yes.
And
Yes.
how we're doing it going to get us to a new place?
I want to jump right in. I'm just going to ask the questions. I wrote down a few things as you were speaking. For those listening, when I run these podcasts, like I try to tell a story, I have something in mind, and this one I didn't. I was messaging with, I talked to Jennifer all the time, but I was texting her beforehand, and I had some like talking points, but I don't have a specific direction that I want this to go. I'm learning and listening along with you folks, so I'm just going to ask the questions. Maybe they're out
Mm-hmm.
of order, but something that's been really top of mind for me and weighing heavily on me is: do we globally have the
Mm,
capacity to forgive? I'm going to use those words, and they might not be the right words, but one of the things that I'm concerned about in my HSP self is seeing there's a lot of anger, and
mm-hmm,
justified anger, right?
mm-hmm,
A lot of anger, and when someone leaves a cult,
mm.
you can't be like, "You fucking stupid ass, what were you doing in there? How fuck you not see that?" Like, that's ultimate, even if that cult hurt you, right?
Uh-huh.
Right? They're part of there's a cult, and they're doing mean things to you, and that person, someone leaves.
Mm.
And so maybe, forgive isn't the right word, but do we have the capacity to move forward?
I
What do you
do
think?
believe we have it. Um, it comes back to that stopping part, though, and actually looking at what what do we believe forgiveness should look like? Um, One of the quotes I remember reading early on was from an author, Tiffany Jana, and they said, "Grace with the expectation of progress." That's what you hold inside, is grace with the expectation of progress, meaning
Yeah.
you don't allow it and just say, I forgive it.
Mhm.
You say, I forgive. However, here are the roots that we need to tend to now. One of the this actually can pertain to cancel culture too, because that's been huge for the last 4 years. I asked this one question to people, like, do you feel like you owe someone redemption, especially when it comes to these big names?
Mhm, 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 mhm.
What does redemption mean for you when you have somebody who's done something wrong, and maybe they do put out a AI generated statement, but if
Damn,
they start
damn.
trying to change how they move, what does redemption look like? Because truthfully, none of us own redemption. We own our consumption, we own how we approach things, we own what we let around us, and we own our own healing journeys. And there's a lot of times in the healing journey where you have to stop and say, yes, that person was wrong. However, is my desire to hold them to what they did
Mhm.
based off my issues with a collective of people who look like them?
Mhm,
There's more
mhm.
questions that we can ask. But to be honest, when you are angry and you are facing these things on a daily, sometimes hour by hour basis, depending on where you are, it's
Yep.
hard to get out
Ah,
of that because you're still getting, oh, okay,
yeah.
grace with the exit. Yeah, I can't have
Mhm.
grace if you
Uh-huh.
mollywopping me to the ground every day.
Yeah.
My anger is actually my survival mode
Yeah.
because I'm tired of you pushing me there. I'm
Yeah.
tired of a system getting me to that point or surprising me with that because I didn't expect it. So if I just maintain this because I am angry, I don't have to move anywhere. You don't get to shake me. You also don't get in and we don't get to connect, but I'm safe.
Mhm.
This is my safety
Yeah.
mechanism. So that's when it comes to forgiveness, we have the capacity. Do we have the desire? Is really the question. And the understanding of what it looks like when you actually forgive and move forward together.
Can you talk about that pause? Anything you
Ooh.
wanna say about it. How do we There's a million questions I could ask, but, I would love for you to just riff on that pause, and then we can go into, you know, because it has the knee-jerk reaction is like, "Give me a list for the pause then. Give me a task list, I'll download the PDF, and then I'll pause, and we'll have world peace."
This is it. This is the transformation. Um, I think the pause to me is both for the energy to rest, everything outside to
Yeah,
rest,
yeah.
um, and for us to actually sit with ourselves and say, what's my code right now? What's my code of ethics? What are my
Mhm.
values? Because the closer I am to that, yeah, I talked about this in the mafia dinner, it becomes intuitive how you're going to move. It
Mhm.
also
Yeah.
becomes intuitive what you're going to accept. But right now, if you're leading with the energy, not saying that they're not emergent groups that need us to move right now, because ICE agents are real
Mhm. Yes,
and
yes, yes,
people are truly afraid of for their lives, for their
yes.
families, for their connection. So yes, there are emergent things, but as far as the building the community part right now, whoa, who are you in community? What does community mean to you? Because if you don't know your code, if you don't know your values, the minute something comes up, and there will be something that comes up that scares the living daylights out of you and pushes you into survival mode, you actually can become a threat in my community
Yes,
because you're not even
yes.
moving on their value, you're moving on the fear because it's disconnected from what you believe.
100%. Say it
So
again.
that pause, which part?
The moving, speak I want more words, I'd love more words.
More words.
More words to that reaction state and
Yeah.
why what happens. happens in that reaction state.
Yeah, fear is the one thing that most people are feeling right now. And it just so happens that the powers that be know that fear is their tool.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we can get them into a state of terror. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to move for themselves. And honestly, it's going to create a chaos that
Yep.
we can just let it be, right? But if we stop and think, what's going on right now? We're grieving because we know we've lost what was. We're grieving because we are seeing the possibility of the things we're going to lose right now. We have not completely lost everything, but we are seeing what we're losing and what could be on the dock and saying, well, what does that mean for me? And you're going through this while your life is like lifing. Like, think about people
Yeah.
right now in California
Yeah.
who don't
Your house
have a
just burned down.
home, and you're watching the waters go the other way
Mm-hmm.
versus where they need to. These are the
Mm-hmm.
things you're having to like hit your head against the wall and say, does this make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. But one thing I said in an episode last year is not going to make sense if you know the person that you want to be. If you know you want to be someone who shows up for people, if you know you want to be someone that is in community, that cares about people and puts people before money, people before politics, people before all of these systems that have been created, if you know that's what you want to do, you will move that way. But if you don't know and you just keep checking off the list, it causes you to say, well, I keep calling my senators. It looks like the empire is falling
Yeah.
right now. And have my senators, are they even in the room right now? Have I heard from them? Like, these are the questions you start to ask and say, well, is my energy best used there? Or do I need to look in my city and say, what's on our docket to lose and where could I show up in that
Yes.
community?
Yes.
So when I say pause, I'm saying pause and just ask yourself some questions first, because it will also change the energy you put out in the world, which we don't need any more chaos. We don't. We're good. We're good on that. Um, and it also changes what you're looking for when you get on these platforms.
Writing the things down
And
because so I don't forget. Y'all, you've listened to this podcast for however long. But y'all know that I've brought JPop on a bunch. I've also brought on Laura Jean a bunch. And the reason I bring on Laura Jean so much is it's at the heart of this, everything that Dr. JPop is saying right now of who are you? What are your values? What matters to you? And I know that for many of the listeners, especially those that are raised and socialized female, maybe you were never asked. Maybe you were never given a moment to think about that. But that's also why I do the work that I do is to be like, hey, today we take a moment and think about this. All right. Y'all know that for me, action is always the answer. Sometimes if you act first, think later, it becomes problematic. But I will say, because I know that people are like, but then what do I do? Everything I do is wrong. As I act first, it's a problem. If I don't do stuff, what I'm hearing Jennifer say is that if your values are at the heart, I'm going to use my word of the year, at the root of everything, right? You take an action and then you get a moment to be like, is this helping? Why did I take this action? Oh, because I'm the type of person that does this. This is a value of mine. I value this thing, and this is my value, right? This is one of my values. So this is why I did that thing. Okay, now I can say, is it actually moving me, us, the collective, towards what I want? No. Okay, then we can take that energy and go in this direction. Because I fear that when people hear like, oh, I did something, I called my senators, and you're telling me that it's not right, and it's like she didn't say that.
yeah.
And I think the majority of you listening know that, but I'm gonna just fucking say it just in case any of you are like, but I'm just trying to help. Love it. We just always ask, why do I do what I do? Is it because it's my value or because it's what someone else wants, someone else values? Like this goes for anything. Like, why are you showing up in that way? Why is this your profession? Why are you wearing those clothes? All the things. Why do I do
Mm-mm.
this? Is it rooted in my own values? Okay. Is it being helpful? Is it moving things in the direction? No. Okay, then we can do something, move in a different direction, because I do see that of we want to help. We want things to be done, right? We want to help. We also
Yeah.
like don't want this feeling of like, I have no control and it's chaos. So like I'm gonna just do something
Yeah.
which we can be more efficient and effective with
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
ultimately.
and like you said, it comes from the root of why. When I have spent these years talking about a system that is inequitable, watching it fall is kind of like,
That
I mean, guys,
yeah.
but that's my
Yes.
perspective that leads me to say my task will not be calling my senators. One, I'm in a
Mhm.
bloody red state. So
Mhm.
I know how that works,
How's that
but
gonna
it
go?
also doesn't discount those who have been able to do it and have been able to. But the intuition is what I really want for people to realize, is that if you are really putting your finger on the pulse of what's happening, and not just the fear, but like looking at the chain of events, you will know which action step you need to take.
I wanna circle back or highlight that
Mm,
because I think that there is perhaps an underlying or unspoken fear
mm,
when you tell someone to trust themselves. That can
mm,
be really scary for people.
mm.
Like, I'm like,
Abs-
you
uh,
tell me, and I'm like, no shit. That's the only person I trust. You, me, and Jennifer, like, and Rupert, like, it's fine. But for many people,
uh-huh.
saying trust your gut is a scary thing, or it could be scary because it's
Yeah.
unfamiliar, or they're like, but how do I know? Like, I
Uh-huh.
want to, but any thoughts around that? Just
Yeah, I
afraid to say
think
no.
no, no, no. There's this that I think that's part of that pause too, because if that brings fear, why does it bring fear?
Hmm.
I would
Yeah,
want to
why?
know,
Get
like,
curious.
what about even me saying that makes you say, but how do I trust myself? I know it's because how
Yes.
our society has worked
Yep.
is it has done overtime work to disconnect us from
Yes.
self, to
Yes.
make us think in many ways we were choosing our paths, but we were still choosing a path that benefited
Hmm.
a very few. I'm not even, let's
No,
take the
exactly.
isms away and look at the power structures.
This.
It benefited a very few. And now that we've made progress in people saying, I'm not going to do it that way, I refuse to do it the way that I was taught. I don't want to get that degree, but I do want to do this work. So
Hmm.
I'm going to find a way
Hmm.
because I want to help people. People are starting to become aware, or the term that everybody has been using on, it's woke. Like, that's what woke is. Woke is
Right?
knowing yourself.
Bring it back.
It's literally
Take
like
it back.
all you are is awake to yourself and your place in the world, in the context of the world, and then you move accordingly. So I would say that fear makes sense right now.
That, that.
The next question I would say is, what's your relationship with discomfort? Because there is going to be a lot of it as you learn to trust yourself. And truthfully, the only way to trust yourself is to do the next best thing that you feel, and then see what the impact of that was on you. Because you may have to calibrate. Again, this
Yeah.
is simple. I said this in 2020. It was in a different context. But in trusting yourself, you're going to make mistakes. But those mistakes are the things that help you calibrate that intuition. It doesn't mean you stop at all. It just means, okay, so like let's see what happened here. Like, where was the gap? Or was this just the wrong move and I missed the cue? Oh, well, I'm going to try again the next time. And then I'm going to see how much more comfortable I can get. Your measures change. Your measures change in terms of what you feel like. I'm just comfortable making a mistake now. Okay,
Yes.
that's good because you know yourself and you know I'm resilient. I'm going to do it differently the next time and I'm not going to stop. So, in order to get that internal knowing, that discernment inside, if there is no spiritual practice for you right now, it's really saying, I'm committed to the discomfort of figuring out how to trust myself so that I can know myself.
Can you put words to the discomfort?
Ooh.
I know it's gonna be different for everybody, but you work with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And how has that perhaps manifested for people or shown up for people?
The discomfort usually,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna tell you, it shows up in productivity.
Hmm.
It shows up in, I'm just gonna do, because in this discomfort, if at least I do something, I'm productive while I'm uncomfortable. Case in point, last year, I knew I needed to start my second season of the podcast after the election. Knew it. But there had been so much time in between of observation and stuff that was dots were connecting that I was like, no, I haven't had an episode. I need to start the season 2. And then I started it and I was like, this don't feel right. This doesn't feel
Mhm.
right. This doesn't feel like what people even want to hear right now. And after 2 episodes, I had to pause. So for me, at that moment, I realized, man, productivity won. I didn't win. My intuition didn't win in that moment. And yes, that was a public thing that I had to do. But when I came back, I was able to say, y'all, I messed up on the timing. I messed up on the timing, and I chose a value that was not mine anymore because it was comfortable. And now I realized that was not the move.
Question for you. When you
Yeah.
stopped the podcast, did you
Yeah.
die?
No. I lived more, actually. I had a lot of life.
Did you
A lot of
die?
life that I could
No.
bring. So no, I did not die. I didn't
Right?
die.
Y'all, this is the shit we've been talking about for 6 years. Specifically on this podcast, all this bullshit of perfectionism and all this other stuff. And I say bullshit in the most like kind, loving way and also equally
Yeah.
frustrated way of this. These are all things that are imposed externally, right? Of just like, you're supposed to do this. You should do this. You should be able to do this. And then if you can't, you're just like, I am bad. Then you take it on. I
Mm-hmm.
am bad. I am not worthy. I am going to lose my most sacred thing, which is
Mm-hmm.
community. No one's going to talk to me. I'm going to be excommunicated. I'm going to die. Right. From all of
Mm-hmm.
that, you literally are like, if I stop this podcast episode, then all of those thoughts just went through your head. And then you're like, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not the case. Right. The system would have you believe that. But reality has shown us time and time again that that's not the case. Even with cancel culture, I do want to bring that up and circle back. I've
Mm-hmm.
said since day one, canceling is not a thing. It doesn't exist. As long as you keep showing up, because think about the worst fucking person you can think about. They still have a
Mm-hmm.
fucking audience. All their shit just been thrown in the street. The trash bags are in the street. We see all of it. And they're still fucking got an audience. They still have their shit. Is it easier for some people than others? Yes, I will say the both end of that.
Mm-hmm.
But the what I'm getting at here is if you keep showing up, you're okay. Ideally, you've learned from what this thing that happened, and we
Mm-hmm.
course correct. I don't even use the word correct. We change directions, right? And we learn from this thing.
Yeah.
We get okay. We become more okay making quote unquote mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I want us all to understand this and circling back to like having taken an action and like, oh, I did the wrong thing. Okay, what now? Right? Okay, what now? It doesn't mean sprint in a new direction. Literally, JPop is explaining here. It's take a pause. And as you're taking a pause and thinking about these things, I would love for you to have that underlying safety that you're going to be okay. Right? Our nervous system, we could take it back to where JPop and I first met, physical therapy. Your nervous system's always seeking safety. So all the fucking things you do, what can I do to be, and some of this is a perception of safety. It may not be actually the safest
Mm-hmm.
bet, it's perception of safety. So if we can go into this with, I'm gonna be okay. I'm not going to be excommunicated. Let me take a moment. Why did I do the things that I did? What does it mean? What are my values? And then we can move forward from there. And if you stop your podcast, if you dive into
Yeah.
productivity as the
Yeah.
answer, and then you're like, wait, it feels bad in my body. I want to highlight. She said that she's like, feels bad. We all know that, folks. You all know that. Whether or not you feel comfortable saying I trust my gut, you all know that feeling. If you have that feeling and then you take a pause, and that means that you have to stop the thing you were doing, you have to stop the podcast, you're not going to die.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to die.
You
Right?
said something important too. The
The
perception of
perception.
safety. That is important. Important because if you don't trust yourself, if you don't feel that you have intuition, if you don't feel like you have discernment, then what you perceive as safety might not be your own either.
This at
And
all.
so writing down, hey, what does safety feel like? And it may feel weird. You may say things that you actually don't. And then when you realize in practice, actually, that's not safety, that's just comfort.
It's
Then
familiar.
you. Then you get to actually feel and say, I'm safe around this person. I feel safe in this class. I feel safe when I'm with this group of people. Like, then you get to actually tap in and say, but this is when my body says I'm safe. Then it
Body
changes
knows.
for you. Yes. So
It
when the fear is
knows.
when the fear is tapped into or triggered or something comes up, then you can say, but I said that I have safety in this, 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 and this. Can I
This.
just go spend time there so my body can
This.
feel it while I'm in the discomfort?
Dude, this
Then you have
perceived
community.
safety. We're gonna keep going down with this path because that perceived safety. One of the things you had said earlier was, what did I write? Grieving the loss of what was, and I'm like, this happened in COVID, and people were
Yeah.
like, we just like got to go back, and I'm like, to what? It's bad. It's not good there, but it was familiar,
It was.
and familiar misery feels way
Yeah.
safer than whatever
Hmm.
is over there. You're like, but I know what's coming.
Absolutely.
I know what's there, right? This perception, and then fast forwarding in the podcast episode to what you had just said of uh, that can ultimately end up being harmful for you, and that's what we're seeing right now, right? Where it's like 2020 came for Black people, and then
Uh-huh.
2025 was like, no, actually, we're here for everybody,
Yeah.
all of you. This system that is in place in the United States, it's here for all. Are you a billionaire? Okay, then it's coming for you.
It's coming for you. It's coming
I
for
don't care what
you.
color. What, I don't care. Are you a billionaire? Do you have $1 billion? Get the fuck out. I'm
Yeah,
coming
and it's funny because I
for
think
you.
that actually perpetuated some of the allyship missteps too. Was when we're using these terms, when we're having these workshops, when we're talking about these things, we're trying to become better informed so that when one group is weaponized against another,
Mhm.
you can see the truth underneath
Mhm.
it. You can see the through line of history and the patterns of dysfunction. That's the part that we were separating it all, and so people didn't feel like, oh, it could never be me because in history, I wasn't on the end of that. I wasn't on
Y'all,
the receiving end.
y'all, we are a bunch of movement professionals. And if we relate that to the human body, that's like the elbow being like, yo, that was a fucking knee problem. That shit ain't coming from me. That systemic issue, that's for a knee. Y'all, all of us,
Mm-hmm.
all of us, all of us, all of us, all of us. And I do think, when I sit and I scroll, but also like I do think I do have hope. And I do think
Mm-hmm.
people are getting it. I do think that people left to their own devices, humans are good, and left to their own devices, humans will create. Humans are incredible. There's this narrative
Mm-hmm.
out there that humans bad. And if they're left to their own devices, they're not going to work. They're lazy. And I'm just like, no. History has actually taught us that.
Uh-huh.
Like, I'm not making this up. This is not like, oh, I think this. Like, this is science. This is, we can go
Yeah.
and see, like, look at all this shit that was built. We still exist. Why? Like, left to your own devices. I do have a lot of hope. And I do think we are capable of a lot of things. But I think that, and I think I know that the powers that be, power wants to hold on to power. I wants to hold on
Power
to it.
over, especially that type of power, the power over something versus actually empowering. And the goal is we want to switch to that empowering side where we can empower each other to actually be ourselves and know ourselves and see our gifts and also see them in the context of the community that you are in.
I love this. I love this. I love this. I love this. Because I know folks that are listening right now and be like, Maestro, you told me you don't like that word empower. I don't. Because how most people think of it and use it is actually overpower, of like, I'm going to give you power. Right. I mean, it's like, you have none and I'm going to give you power. We can actually take a step back and think about the initial step of this is what
Mm-hmm.
JPop has been talking about. The best thing that you can do for other people is to pause and know yourself. Right? Start there. What are your roots? What is your why? the best thing. Because as soon as we know, right? I put this in the, where did I share this? To be talking a lot. I think I put it in the Mafia. So some of you don't know this. But I went ice skating, and my skates just broke in half, right? The skates are from high school. They just disintegrated. And so I put in my story that I went ice skating, and Beth Dreyer messaged me and was just like, yo, I've been wanting to go ice skating, but I can't find anyone to go. And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? This inspired me. I'm going to go ice skating. And I was like, watch out that your skates don't disintegrate. And she was like, actually, mine did. And she's like, I guys got new ones. And I was like, yo, the weather here. My shit literally, JPop, it fucking disintegrated. The whole
I
disintegrated,
believe it.
just crumbled. So she had gotten new skates and she's like, I'm going to go. She went ice skating, put it in her stories. And she was like, yo, I got mad people that were like, hey, you want to go ice skating? Hit me up. And I was like, yes, we know this. The best way to get people to do something is to do it first yourself. Like the best way to inspire. And yes, there's action items after that, but as a start. So the
Mm-hmm.
best way that we can have people, if we're looking to lean into this, pause and be rooted, be grounded, identify your values, is to do that first yourself. That is
Mm-hmm.
to me the most empowering thing of you showing up like that, as opposed to like, I have all this privilege and I'm going to bequeath it onto you. Like
Yeah.
there's a difference in how we view this and what I believe the action items are with that. But I love that the J-pop highlighted that concept of overpower or over culture, because that is what we see. And that's why, the power, they want to, folks that
Hold
have
on.
this, they want to hold on to that
Mm-hmm.
shit,
I
and
think
they
a
will,
great
go
I
ahead.
think a great practice is, since we are used to being told what to do, we feel like we have to ask for permission. And so you putting it in your stories, Beth putting it in her stories,
Mm-hmm.
is someone saying that we can do that right now. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
something that I used to love maybe, and I just don't do anymore because I thought we did it
Yep.
as kids, or we did it as, as a hobby. And so if you're still in that framework, I understand it's hard to come out of it. So look for the things that light you up, or the things that fire you up, and just consider that the permission.
That's it.
If
That's it.
you get a emotional reaction to it, consider that permission to be curious about
Yes.
why that touched you, because it's going to take a minute. Like you said, be trusting yourself. It's going to take a minute in that, but you can still look for the cues that come in from outside that say to you, hey, we like that. That sounds good. No, we don't like that. We want to stand up against that. That
Mm-hmm.
that is how you can use the framework that they've used against us, so that you can free your mind and free yourself to be more intuitive
Yes.
and be
What
more
would you
curious.
What would you say to folks that are grappling with the both and of like the both and I'm just gonna go with that. With the both and of, is this putting my head in the sand?
Hmm.
Doing that. Is leaning into that. Just putting my head into to the sand. What is there a demarcation between uh um what is the word I want to use? Is there a demarcation between positive or
Mm-hmm.
toxic positivity,
Mm-hmm.
and can you just give us some words around that, J Pop?
Yeah, I love to look back at the different Renaissance eras in Black history. Um, because even in the midst of civil rights fights and protest and in the middle of all of that, there was all this art that came out of it. And some of it was protest music, some of it was protest art, some of it was just, this is what I'm feeling and I gotta get it out.
Mm-hmm.
You said we are creative beings, right? If we are trying to become creative and intuitive beings in terms of our communities, then ask yourself, when you're doing something, am I choosing joy with the knowledge that I will come back and face this? Or am I choosing joy because I don't want to process what emotion is being brought up for me when I'm faced with this? And answer it truthfully, because you're the one asking it. So that is to me the delineation between toxic positivity and actually say, no, I'm choosing joy in this moment, because the new world that we're creating is going to have joy too. We don't
Mhm.
bury joy because right now it's not necessary. Why is it not necessary? They told us that when we fight, we can't be joyful. They told us that we can't laugh. I will be if you don't want to follow me, don't follow me if you don't want to laugh in the middle of all of this, because you're going to get the joy. I need it. I need it to continue doing what I'm doing, because that's what full life looks
Yes.
like.
Yes.
That's what meeting my basic needs looks like. It's saying I gotta find the hope. I gotta find the joy, because what I'm doing is in the trenches right now, y'all. It's dark down here, and I can't be a light if I don't find light at some point. That just doesn't work for me. I can't stay always in the light, because then I
Yes.
wouldn't. What's
No.
the point?
Yes.
But using that framework can really help you know what you're doing. And also, stop judging people. Stop judging people. How people
No.
respond right now is not your business. It's not. It's really not. Everybody's nervous system is responding based off their grief cycle, their growth cycle, and whatever setting they're cued
Although,
to. Fight, flight, fawn, freeze, whatever it is. Everybody's in that mode right now. So your judgment really isn't necessary. You
oh,
moving intentionally is what we need.
yes. One of the things, one, I'm laughing because I'm thinking about the meme. It wasn't a meme. It was a reel that you put up, and chick is running out the White House, and she's like, "I took all the pens." That shit was funny. I took
I
all the
laughed
pens.
at that for
You can't
30
sign anything
minutes.
else now. I stole all the pens. That shit was funny. That shit
I
was
needed it.
funny.
I needed it.
That shit was funny. Funny. The follow-up to that is one of the things that James Olivia speaks about, right?
Mm,
You're gonna judge, right? It's not necessarily, productive, but we can flip it
yeah,
and make it productive and
that's
say,
it.
"Why? Why?" The judgment
That's
is gonna happen, judgment is, right? But
You're right.
it is what I hear when JPop is saying that is, "Don't fucking go and put it on Instagram. Don't put it on Threads." All I see on
That's it.
Threads is people just judging and being like, "How come you didn't boycott this thing?" Motherfucker, because I gotta eat today. Like, that's why. Uh, have your judgment
Yes.
and process it with your people on the phone
Yes.
or in your text thread. I don't need to see it on Threads. Nobody else needs to see it on Threads.
And it helps.
Because,
I need to change how I say that, because
like,
you just don't follow through with your judgment.
just 'cause don't fucking make it in the newspaper. Like, it
Yeah.
is so helpful to me. The judgment is helpful if we take a pause, like J-Pop's been saying this whole time, and say, why?
I
Why
like
am I
that.
judging this person?
Hmm.
Because I'm mad? Because I wish they were saying more? Well, why am I mad? What is it? And how have I shown up? Am I
Yeah.
mad 'cause I didn't show up enough? Or am I mad because, like, this person asks me for stuff and then they don't? I don't know what the situation is.
Hmm.
And I'm basing this off of I have plenty of judgments.
Hmm.
I ain't gonna put them on Instagram. One judgment that I did put was, I don't like walking the fucking dog, though, and then a million people wrote it, and I was like, it wasn't even judgment, actually, it was my personal experience of, "This is
It's just
unpleasant.
personal. Yeah, that's different.
This is fucking unpleasant." And then the whole world was like, "Ah, you don't like dogs?" And I was like, "This is why
Hmm.
nothing goes on the fucking internet." Because there's
Hmm.
no
Hmm.
nuance, which is what I wrote down on my little whiteboard over here, that what J-pop is saying and asking for is discernment and nuance. It's effort, right? All this takes
Yeah.
effort, right? The question that she posed that I made sure that we had to pause after there, right? The delineation between toxic positivity and, like, listen, joy is period. Right? That was what she asked for, was like, you gotta take a moment and have discernment and have nuance and be introspective and be reflective, right? It takes effort. Right? All of
Yeah.
these things take effort and they take intentional effort. We have the ability to put in effort, but sometimes we're like, I'm fucking running away and I'm just keeping busy
Yeah.
work.
Yep.
But can we take a moment and sit and be intentional? And I think I want to circle back to this discomfort. And mainly I think I'm asking and pressing you for continued
Mm.
words and language, because I think, like, things are less scary when they happen and we expect it or we've, like, heard it
Yeah.
before. We're like, "Oh, okay, well, that's a thing that J-pop said," and it's still discomfort, but, like, I don't know, it's kind of like jumps us forward in that process of like, first is like awareness. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm aware of it because I have words already for like what this
Uh-huh.
discomfort manifests as. Like, what else
Hmm.
have you seen? If you can think of any other examples.
So I feel like a lot of the examples right now have been pre-election. Right now, when you look at discomfort, the discomfort itself makes sense. Let's
Mhm.
put that out there. Let's validate the discomfort because you are watching things happen
Mhm.
at an
Mhm. Mhm.
alarming rate and you
Mhm.
have no clue, right? So there are a lot of questions coming up for you. Like, am I going to have a job? Am I going to be able to make
Mhm.
money? Are my kids going to have a school to go to? I can't pay to
Yeah.
send them to a voucher system school because I can't
Mhm.
pay. There's a lot of day to day interaction things that are coming up that make that discomfort make sense. When I talk about discomfort in terms of yourself, I mean something that convicts you, something that convicts you of something you believe, a former belief, a former value,
Mhm. Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
see something that agitates it and takes the foundation of a lot of what you've believed and says, what does that mean? One, you're usually asking, what have I been doing then? Is usually the one question because we tend to regret as
Mhm.
humans. And then the next question is, what does that mean? What's next then? That same thing when you were saying that it's that comfort of the familiar. Well, this
Mhm. Mhm.
belief is
Mhm.
familiar though. So why would I change it if it's gotten me this far? And then that comes to that shared reality we've talked about. It's gotten you this far, but we're going to need more than you in order to make all of this something different, right? So when I say discomfort, I expect you to look at the news and be like, "Ooh, this does not feel good. I feel it in my chest. I feel it in my voice. I feel it all in my body." Yes. Uh-huh. Now, when something comes and it agitates you and your identity, what do you do? What do you do next? Do you rush to be seen as a good person? So you try to learn everything so that you can make up for the mistake that you just need to grieve, baby. It happened. You didn't have the skill set or the tools at that moment, but that doesn't mean you won't meet the next moment differently. So to me, if you get that discomfort itself, then say, I will meet the next moment differently because you're going to learn things in between now and the next time that comes up that will aid you in meeting that moment. Don't mean you're going to do it perfectly, doesn't mean it's not going to be a mistake or even another blow up or something, but you can still say that affirmation of, I'm going to meet the next moment differently.
This.
I
If
hope that
I
helps.
It does. I'm gonna add an ask
Okay.
because one of the things you said there, like, yes, that's huge and stood out. Do I rush to be seen as a good person? We take it back to what we said before. Why do we want to be seen as a good person? Being part of community, we know that being independent, being on your own, rather not being independent, being on your own, our chemistry, our biology is like you're gonna die. Then, like
Mm-hmm.
a wolf is going to eat you if you're on your own. Right? We understand this, but we don't. That's why embarrassment is the worst fucking feeling because what happens
Mm-hmm.
next is like excommunication. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a difference if you take the pause. I'm just gonna. This episode's about to be called the pause, right? If you take the pause that JPop is speaking about, and do that 5-year-old drill of but why? Because there's a difference between saying the mistake is I rushed to be seen as a good person, or being like, is it that I hurt someone?
Mm-hmm.
They're very different things in terms of what we're going to act on next, right? And we're going to act to try and do better, right? Is it that like if we just don't take a pause and this thing happens and then we're like, I feel this way and I feel this way because, and all that we're really able to kind of center is ourselves and our experience in this feeling. I feel bad because I did something wrong. Then you just try
Mm-hmm.
to change that versus if it's like, what does that mean? And we tied into your values and you're like, oh, because I like actively hurt someone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So now, like, why did I hurt them? Like, in terms of like what was the thing there? Okay, we have a more tangible action item, a more tangible direction
Mm-hmm.
as well, right? So the question here is, can you speak to this? Um, I don't know, maybe delineation of centering yourself versus centering others, because there is that inherent I need to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
But there is shared reality.
Mm-hmm.
And there is safety, more safety when actually we're all considered. But we also have the swing of the pendulum where people that were never perhaps asked, what do you feel? What do you believe? It can then they're like, but this is what I feel now. And I'm centered that. Ah! Can you speak to that? I don't know, maybe the balance, the dance of centering yourself, centering others. You can use whatever words if you're like, I don't even want to fucking say centering, whatever.
Mm-hmm. I think perspective and shared reality are the two things. Your perspective on the moment is still important because you do need to ground yourself in why you're likely feeling defensive about the moment. You do.
Oh, definitely.
That has to happen. But the impact of what happened was harm. And you can't change what you did, but
Love
you
that.
can be curious about how you can repair first. Repair.
Love
Because this overarching umbrella that we've labeled good person right now, what does that even mean? Because if we're going to use the term good, then what does bad mean for you? Like there's so many
Mm-hmm.
ways that we use that for ourselves as a shield. And it's like, but it actually keeps us from that connection and curiosity piece. And so if I say, yes, to myself, I harmed you. In my head, I need to say, am I safe right now? Is this a safe environment? If you can say yes, then tell yourself, I'm safe right now. Now, what would I like to come from how I approach this? Because you've answered the question. Anything else that you choose is that's your choice, right? If you still say I want to defend myself, I want to, well, that was a choice, and you're going to meet the moment again,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have another choice. That's you. There's no judgment from me. It's just you're going to have to learn as you go, as well as we all do. But if you can stop and say I am safe, this is a moment where I get to connect and understand someone a little better, but also understand not only their perspective, but how my perspective impacts their perspective and their lived experience. So it's really just stopping at that part and acknowledging the safety, then, if that's what you want to feel, and then moving from there. Knowing that, yes, it is uncomfortable as hell when you have hurt somebody and your intention was not to.
Yes. I will throw in there, as I have another question.
Mm.
I do things face to face, folks. Whatever you can, do things face to face. It is really hard to be angry with somebody face to face. You'd be mad as hell in the shower. You'd be winning all them arguments in the shower. Like, I'm fucking say this. And they're going to say this next. And I'm going to say fucking that. I already know. And then you like are with them and you're like, hi, how are you doing? I'm good. Right. So just a thought, do
Mm.
things face to face, like have the conversations face to face, which brings me to the question I had.
Mm.
I am going to ask for a little bit of a list here, not to check it off and be like, I'm done. But again, I think there's
Mm-hmm.
something to be said about putting language out there, putting identifiers out there so that we have a foundation for things.
Yeah.
You said, ask yourself if I am safe. Can you give, and everyone's is going to be different, but can you give some examples of safe? I understand that things
Mm.
are going to be different, but I just feel like if I allowed that just to be put out there as the action
Absolutely.
item,
Yeah,
people are
yeah,
gonna be like,
yeah.
I'm not safe. And I'm like, you're just uncomfortable, but you're
But
safe.
that's going to be the question: is are you feeling unsafe or are you feeling uncomfortable? That's the additive you can put on there. Am I feeling unsafe or am I feeling uncomfortable? Um, Safe can look different. If I have done something that has escalated to a point where nobody's being heard, there is not the opportunity for conversation, and maybe I harm somebody and there are supporters
Mm-hmm,
around
mm-hmm,
them.
mm-hmm.
So it actually
Yes,
physically is not
physically
safe.
unsafe.
First of all, do you have a connection with that person? Because if you have a connection with that person, then say, I understand I have harmed, and you are genuinely apologizing for the harm that you caused, even if you did not intend it. And then say, I would love to revisit this when you are ready. And that's how you can say, at least I'm following up on this, and actually do follow up. But when I say safe, that still may be a prompt for you to go back and say, well, what is safety to me? That,
Yes.
because then you
Yes.
can say, and then what is my relationship with discomfort? Because knowing those two and what's behind them will allow you in the moment to integrate and say, ooh, I'm feeling uncomfortable. Let's go ahead and face this right on.
That in mind, follow up. One of the things that I did know that I wanted to talk to you about on this podcast, on this episode, is, and this to me, it ties into both of those things of safety and discomfort. When the goal is change, when the desire is change, to me, part of that, whether it's an action step or the counterpart or whatever, is risk. It is losing things that were.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to your experience on with that? Where perhaps, and for the audience, where my brain is this is like a situation where you're like, this is the outcome I want, and that outcome requires me to risk this familiarity, this comfort that I have. But if I want to go to this, if I want to step onto that, I'm thinking about this fucking, what are those fucking, I don't really go to them, the little like team building parks, right? Where the wood fucking, you're like on a harness, and it's like, if I want to get to
Mm-hmm.
that step, I got to let go of this little rope that I have here. Is there anything that you want, any instances or anything you want to share around that? Could be an actual thing, could be thoughts around it. Just, I have been thinking about that a lot. And
It's
that's what
so
I was.
funny. I don't know if you remember years ago, I shared a video of a little boy who was on the bed and there were all these pillows around him, and he wanted to get from the bed to the floor. And so he had a little pacifier in his mouth and he's crawling around and he's looking. And he puts his foot down and he realizes I can't reach it. And so he looks around and he pulls a pillow and drops all these pillows. And then he takes his pacifier out because he's serious. He takes his pillows and he's like, I'm getting off of this bed. And he's doing it all by himself, probably less than 2 years old. And then finally he gets enough pillows and he grabs his pacifier, puts it in his mouth, and then reaches down and gets off the bed. And when I saw it, of course, I'm like, cutest little thing when
Mm-hmm.
kids like try to figure things out. But also, there was one thing that I noticed was his pacifier came with him. He took his pacifier out for a moment. It was something that was
Mm-hmm.
safe to him. It was something that was secure to him. And he put it back in to make the journey. And the second time I watched the video, I was like, man, there is something about trying something new that requires you to hold something familiar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in this moment with what's going on, I can't say what everybody's going to lose. I don't know
Absolutely not.
what that's going to look like. But this is why the pause is important to me, because if I can stop and actually name things, then I have created a toolbox internally that says it's going to be uncomfortable for me to let this go, but here's what I have. Here's the
Love it.
practices that I have
Mm-hmm.
that are going to allow me to forge new paths. I don't have specific examples for me, is more of moving out of the way sometimes. There was a period of time where I was asked to be on a lot of panels, and because I'm very aware that I am a light-skinned Black woman, I also know I'm more palatable in a lot of different spaces. Unfortunately, people will pick me because I'm closer to what's familiar in
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
space, which means there are a lot of darker skinned, beautiful, Black, intelligent women who aren't getting the space they should be having because of someone's comfort, because of
Mm-hmm.
someone's
Mm-hmm.
familiarity, because of someone wanting to feel secure and having a face that looks like what they're used to.
Yeah.
So there were several times when I had to say, hey guys, I'm going to bow out, and here's someone that I suggest in my stead. I upset because I'm like, that was
Mhm.
money and I
Uh-huh.
need it. I'm an entrepreneur. This is ooh, uncomfortable, y'all. Ooh, you don't know what my
Uh,
bank account looks like right now. I am
uh-huh.
uncomfortable. But because I don't just know what's going on in my community, I know what's going on in someone else's community because I've had to walk through it. I get to make the choice of how I'm going to make that impact, whether there's risk, discomfort or not, because I know what I value. I know what I hold and I feel better.
That
My
part
body
though.
feels better because even if I lost money, it'll come in
You
another
could you
format.
will.
That abundance
Yeah.
mindset. But what I got to do was say, now we changing culture. And if we're changing culture,
Mhm.
it changes how I move. Another thing we do, our lotions don't come from the store. Like a lot of the stuff in my household does
Mhm.
not come from the actual store. And this has been 4 years in the making. When everything happened with COVID, I
Mhm.
realized I'm gonna have to start learning how to garden and like
Yo,
all these
yo,
things.
that I think about that every day, and I'm like, "I think I'm just gonna die." It's so
Right.
Oh.
No, you're gonna be leading workouts and somebody else will supply the toilet paper. It's gonna be a give and
I'm
take
like
barter system.
ah, fuck.
But in those practices, it isn't me going to Target
Yeah.
clearly and getting
Yes.
lotion. It's ordering from a black
Yes.
owned business who's going to take 2 or 3 weeks. And yes, it's
Yes. That
uncomfortable, but
that
I know what I'm supporting. I
that
know
right
what I'm
there.
getting. So
That
this is why I'm saying pause. It is the values that keep me, and it doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. I could list a bunch of them in the last year that I've probably made, but if I keep coming back, what do I say? I will meet the next moment differently because I have my code that I'm holding on to.
this, 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 this. So much of it. I'm thinking in my head. Yes, I'm gonna say it, and then I'm gonna transition. Nothing is too small of an action. Nothing is like too benign. And I maybe that's a really good word to use, benign. Because when we hear benign, we hear cancer, right? We think
Hmm.
cancer. And if someone was like, "No, but it's just a dot," you'd be like, "Motherfucker, take it off. I don't want it. I don't want that. I don't care if it's the size of a pinhead. It's fine." No, it
It doesn't
matters.
matter. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter that it's so small because it matters, right?
Yeah.
You are actions that way, like shopping, changing where you get your stuff from. You may be like, "Eh." And like if it doesn't matter, then like do that. If you're like,
Hmm.
do it. Because we do like lean into the comforts of like overnight shipping and all this other shit. It's like, okay, nothing is too small. No action is too small. Like it all helps. It all matters. So the segue here, just going to
Mm.
transition here. Um, because one of the ways that I help out, right, one of the ways that I've learned of like what I can do is obviously giving other people a platform and championing them.
Hmm.
To that end, what do you got coming for us?
Yeah. So I'm actually working on a resource that helps us learn how to meet this moment in the best way with some frameworks and just prompts and action steps that aren't all just doing outside of yourself, but also working within. Um, some ways that we can prepare for the unknown, and sit with the discomfort of preparing for the unknown. And then in March, I will be doing a version of a workshop that I did at Boss Up, called It Starts With You, where we're going to unpack how we got here in terms of your own individual identity and how it developed. So, those are the two things that are coming up on the docket. I'm playing with an idea and we'll see. I kind of want to just get on Instagram maybe once a week and let's just like breathe and talk about what we're doing. Let's not talk about what's going on upstairs. Let's not talk about the chaos. Let's talk about what we are doing for ourselves. So, if you sign up for the newsletter, follow me, then you'll get
All
all of
this
my
things.
ideas and everything else. But that's what's coming up.
I love
Yeah.
this. All this stuff will be in the show notes. My guess is also by the time this episode comes out, the you'll be able to register for I'm actually gonna say it. You'll be able to register, this way J-Pop's on the hook. You will be able to register.
She knows
There's
me
no
too well,
pause.
y'all. She knows
No
me too well.
pause,
She knows
right?
me too well.
When this comes out, you will be able to head to the show notes and clicky click, tappy tap, and sign
I
up
love it.
for the workshop that J-Pop is running, because she already had it done. That's why I can push her on
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
because I was privy to the first iteration of that at Boss Up, and it was so cool because, again, I am privy to an audience that, I don't know that Jennifer J-Pop would be in front of just organically,
Mhm.
and so to have her in this room and have every single person just locked in and dialed in and being like, I never knew, but also that makes so much fucking sense. And also I
Mhm.
have kids and now I really am listening. People got kids, you talking about kids, it's just like, wow,
Mhm.
whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa. I see, I understand. Uh, it was really it was special to be it's a special thing, and one of the coolest parts about my existence is that I, for whatever reason, am fortunate to have a front row seat to a lot of things when they first start. And when it's just a little fucking seedling, and I'm like, I seen it go in, I seen it sprout. And so that was really cool because I get to see that, and now you folks will get to see the second iteration of that. So you'll be able to sign up. It will be in the show notes. I'm looking at my list of stuff. Is there anything? Hold on, let me look over here too as well. Is there anything that we didn't go over that I didn't cover from my list and that you can see it that you want to chat about?
Um, keep the hope, y'all. That's really it. Keep the hope. And when you find yourself slipping out of it, one practice I have is actually going back and listening to older activists, authors, um, humans who lived through moments like this, because we are facing something that feels absolutely crazy, but it's really we're facing a consequence of
Mm,
a lot of
mm,
years
mm.
behind us. So it is cool to go back and hear, the James Baldwins, someone presently with us, Angela Davis, even, activists and people that came out of the Holocaust, out of apartheid, some of the stuff that happened in Venezuela just last year. Like, there's enough out there that privies us to say, oh, there's people who've been through something like this. What did they do? And there's some comfort and camaraderie
Sure.
in that. So that keep the hope, because there's a need for it, and there's a need for you in this new world we're building.
That's it, folks. I ain't gonna say nothing else. All of Dr. J Pop's stuff, all of the links will be in the show notes. If you want to connect with her on Instagram, she's at Dr.Jpop. We'll put all the things, though, will be in the show notes. Cool. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for
Amazing.
having me.
Dude, thank you for being you. Thank you for being you. You folks listening, thank you for tuning in. We know you could have been doing anything and you chose to listen to us. And for that, we are both endlessly, endlessly, endlessly grateful. I'm not going to ask for any call. I don't want call to action to go do this thing or go send this thing, listen to this, send it to somebody. The thing that I will ask is if you liked it, you loved it, you hated it, take a pause. Take a pause. All right? Take a pause. All right. That's all that we got for you. Until next time, friends, Dr. J Pop and Maestro